Welcome to a discussion of short sales. As always, this is Kent Gregory, and I'm here to take you through this. We will be following along almost exactly what is in Chapter 2 of Fundamentals of Investments, the ninth edition by Jordan, Miller, and Dolvin. So let's jump into sales, a very common method of buying and selling stocks. So first, some basics, and this is on the right-hand side. So a person who buys and sells shares of stock is said to be long in the stock or to have a long position. In a short sale, you actually sell a stock you don't own. So this is called shorting the stock. After the sale, though, the investor is said to have a short position in the stock, and this is immediately after the selling of the stock. So how does it work? Very simply put. Well, first you borrow shares of stock from your broker, then you sell the shares. And then at some future point, you're going to buy the same number of shares that you bought and return them to the broker. So at that point, you've thus eliminated the short position, and the term on the street is called covering your position, or less commonly, curing the short. But I wanted you to have that out there so you knew. So show an example. So a key point, the person with a short position profits if the stock declines in value. Or to put it another way, you're going to short a stock if you expect it to decline in value. Because in our example, suppose you short 2,000 shares of General Electric, ticker symbol GE, appropriately enough, at a price of $10 per share. You receive $20 from the sale. So note, you've just made a short sale. You have shorted the stock and you now have a short position in the stock. But then a month later, GE is selling for $8 a share. So what you do is you now buy 2,000 shares, the same number you sold a month ago, and you buy those 2,000 shares for $16,000. So you've now covered your position. Because you made $2,000 from the initial sale and it cost you $16,000 to cover your position, you just made $4,000. Another way to look at this is you do things absolutely backwards. So instead of buying a stock and then selling it, you're selling it before you buy it, and then at some point in the future, in this case, 1 month later, you sell it. So now some details. When you short a stock, you have to borrow it from your broker. So you have to fulfill certain requirements or obligations. First, like with margins, there is the initial margin, and then there's the maintenance margin. Second, after you sell the stock, the proceeds are credited to your account, but you can't use them yet. And finally, if any dividends are paid on the stock before you have covered your position, meaning before you've bought the shares, you have to pay the dividends. So those are some details there to keep in mind when you're analyzing or considering making a short sell. So now another example. This is where we get into some not a real case, but some real numbers, I suppose. So suppose you want to short 100 shares of AT&T, ticker symbol T, when the price is $30 per share. So you're betting, if you will, that AT&T is going to go down. So you're going to borrow shares of AT&T worth a total of $30 times the 100 shares you buy, which is $3,000. Your broker has a 50% initial margin and a 40% maintenance margin on short sales. Now remember, with margin purchases, margin is calculated as the value of the account equity relative to the value of the stock purchases. On a short sale, margin is calculated as the value of account equity relative to the value of the stock sold short. So in both cases, essentially, margin equals equity value divided by security value. So now back to the example. The initial value of the stock that was sold short is $3,000, and the initial margin is 50%. So you have to deposit at least $3,000 or half of $3,000, pardon me, half of $3,000, i.e. $1,500, into your margin account. And so your balance sheet looks like this. So some things to note. So first, proceeds from sale is the $3,000 you received when you sold the stock. So there we go. It will stay in the account until you cover your position. And then note the initial margin deposit is the 50% margin you had to post. And so it's not going to change unless there's a margin call. So you actually might even, depending upon the terms of your agreement with the broker, you might even earn interest on that. But for the sake of this example, we're going to keep it simple and there's no interest owned on it or earned on it. So note the short position. Because you must eventually buy the stock and return it, you have a liability. So there you go. There's your liability right there. The current cost of eliminating that liability is $3,000. So another thing to note, account equity is, as always, the difference between the total account value, which is right here, total account value, $4,500, and the total liabilities, which are $3,000. So again, total liability, short position right up there. So $4,500 minus $3,000 is $1,500. So that's your account equity. So another example, and this is based on the original one, scenario one. So suppose the AT&T stock price falls to $20. You're still liable for the 100 shares, but the cost of those shares has fallen to $2,000 from $3,000. So your balance sheet will now look like this. So note, the left-hand side of the balance sheet doesn't change. There you go. It's not changing at all from the previous example. The $3,000 you held after the sale is still there, right there, as is the $1,500 initial margin you deposited. So note, on the right-hand side, the short position is now a $2,000 liability because of the decline in stock. So this is down from that $3,000 that you initially sold the stock for. And your account equity has thus risen to $2,500. So right, so you've made even more money there. So yay. So your margin is equal to account equity divided by the security value. Sorry, misspelling there, but value, i.e. the value of the short position. So $2,500 divided by $2,000 is 1.25, which we convert to 125%. So yay again, we're doing really well. So this is another example, scenario two, and in this we're going to look at the situation where AT&T stock price rises. So in this case, it's going to rise from $30 to $40. You're still liable for the 100 shares, but the cost of those shares now has risen to $4,000, up from that initial $3,000 that you sold the shares for. And again, remember, with short selling, you do it backwards. You sell first, and then you buy. Your balance sheet's now going to look like this. So the proceeds from the sale, it's $3,000. That's the initial sale. The left-hand side doesn't change. So your $3,000 there. Your initial margin is still there. But note on the right-hand side, the short position is now a $4,000 liability, up from that $3,000, and your account equity has thus fallen by $1,000 to $500. So there you go. You've lost some value there. So that's sad. Now with the stock price at $40, you are under margined. The account equity is $500 and the value of the stock you sold short is $4,000. So your margin is now $500 divided by the $4,000, which is 0.125 or 12.5%. So that's very sad, and we're shedding tears there because you are now subject to a margin call. Because that 12.5% is below the 40% maintenance margin. So to make up the margin call, or to true that up, you can buy back some or all of the stock and return it to the broker, or you can add funds to your account. So the short in this scenario too, the short sell did not work out for you. So finally, some last bits of information. To calculate the critical price at which you would be subject to a margin call in a short sale, you would use this formula. So this is a way to predict and kind of know ahead of time, okay, where, when might I be subject to a margin call? So that formula is P with an asterisk. So this is that key price, the critical price, where on top, first what we do is we do the initial margin deposit plus the short proceeds. So we take that number and we divide it by the number of shares. And then we divide that number by 1 plus the maintenance margin. So while we talked about margins with respect to individual stocks, margin also works on the portfolio level. So on the portfolio level, you can go long on some stocks and short on others at the same time. And then margin calls are triggered, in this case, by the overall portfolio value. So not the value of individual stocks. So to sum up, short selling is very common. The amount of stock held short for some companies can be in the tens of millions shares, while the total number of shares across all companies held short can be in the billions. So to measure this, investors refer to short interest, which is the amount of common stock held across all stocks in short positions. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that.